Hey everybody. So I'm back today just to have a bit of another follow-up discussion on my sort of fantasy bug that has bitten me lately amid all of this turmoil on what appears to be the days of Warhammer Fantasy 8th edition closing, the new era of Age of Sigmar, and also I wanted to talk a little bit about Kings of War as well. And so, I guess, I know that throughout this week, and within the community on YouTube at least, but then in other places as well, people have been saying, wait until the Age of Sigmar release comes out, it's still not released yet, you never know what's going to happen. I think at this point, there's really been enough leaked directly from the images of the rulebook and the models and everything to really get, I think, a pretty good idea of what this is shaping up to look like. I think a lot of folks that are, I guess, out front and center within the Warhammer Fantasy community on YouTube, most of them are really doing a pretty good job to maintain being positive. Really not, counting your eggs before, I don't know, I'm horrible with analogies, but you know what I'm saying, not waiting until, everything for sure before making too many rash judgments on the game or anything like that. I just wanted to give my opinion on what I've seen so far, and from the release, from my perspective, on all the things that have transpired recently. And then I wanted to talk about how I'm going to go forward. So far, I'm pretty sure I know how I'm going to go forward, and it's not simple. But given this release and what the changes, so when the pictures were released, I don't know. I think it's been a week now. It seems like it since the pictures have been released. I'll be honest. Whether it be the close-ups, or whether it be the blurry original shots, I'm not really that enamored, with the new look. They look like good models, and, most people have been saying that. I mean, I think the sculpting looks good and things, but the design concept is just not really for me as much. I really like that old world look, and even from the fantasy background and the stuff that I'm into, I'm just not so much into the kind of look. I don't have a good description for it. I've heard some people say high fantasy, some people say Diablo, like just different things. But that kind of look, it's not so much for me. And so that piece wasn't that appealing. But initially when I saw the models, I thought, I was on the side that kind of thought, well, this could just be just one faction, and this is just the way they're going to look. And that could be the case. But what they were moving towards from that perspective really, it didn't really appeal to me that much. In all honesty, I didn't think it looked exactly like Space Marines, but at the same time, I could see the similarities, but it's just overall that I didn't like it that much. And so now, in the last couple of days, more information has come out just on the game itself. I think one of the big things people have been talking about is just there's no point values, but I really just wasn't that impressed. I mean, I don't have a lot of specifics to share, but just in looking at the game and the way that I saw the rules as written, I wasn't really that impressed with it. I mean, it does appear overly simplified compared to 8th edition Warhammer Fantasy, and probably compared to 40k as well, since 40k is getting thrown around a lot, just in comparisons for a number of reasons. And then, I guess, just in general, I saw some of the fluff changes today and how they're changing all the names, on prior models, and there just seems to be a lot of silliness going on, in this release, and in my opinion. And, I'm not bringing out the hate on it. I haven't seen a whole lot that just appeals to me. And this is as somebody that was wanting to come in as a new player. So I'm going to still look at it from afar. Like, I've not written it off, I'm still going to give it a shot as far as looking at it, but I'm already kind of in my mind going in a certain direction because, you know, I just see what's out there already, and there's just things that I can do that already appeal to me where this already doesn't. And so what am I going to do? And I guess I knew I was going to do this all along, but I did locally, although I had on my iPad an edition of Warhammer Fantasy 8th edition, I did get myself a really nice used copy of Warhammer Fantasy 8th edition. I have friends that play and have played Warhammer Fantasy, I just never had. And there are folks locally that I don't see stopping completely playing 8th edition Warhammer. And the more I looked into Warhammer 8th edition, the more despite my video and I had my criticisms that were my first initial look at it, as far as my observations around the way the feel of the game appeared, the more I watched bat reps and the more I followed and looked into it, the more I really did want to try the game and play a ranked up mass battles kind of fantasy game. It started to appeal to me the more I looked into it, and ever since I even saw this book the first time, this just looked like a really good quality book. I thought it would be a nice thing to have in any sense, and so I picked this up, pretty good price, and then I picked this up. And so I was talking about Beastmen, and I held off. I might still do a Mordheim excuse me, troop on Beastmen, but the reason I wasn't really as much wanting to do a Chaos army, and the more I kind of understood Beastmen and where they were going, where they seemed to be going with the Age of Sigmar, but then even just looking at it, you know, it is kind of wrapped up into the Chaos theme, and I didn't really want to do a Chaos theme, and so I might do a Mordheim troop in the future, but more I looked into it, I kind of thought that actually Orcs and Goblins would be the direction I'd like to go, and so that's what I'm starting with. I'm just starting to do some, I just went down and I looked around, and this was one unit I definitely wanted to have to start, and I think I'm just going to work on a 500 point list, paint up a 500 point list in the short term, and then go from there. And so I'll just do a separate video at one point on the plan for Orcs and Goblins. I'm not going to go into that today, but that's who I'm going to go with. And so I've never... Well, I shouldn't say that. I started 40k with an Orcs army, and so it's been like many, many, many years since I've even touched green paint for Orcs or did anything like that, and I thought this would be fun. It seemed like it'd be a really fun army to play and interesting, you know, to paint up and stuff. So that is that. I'm going to try to keep this somewhat short today, but the other thing I just wanted to mention is, so the plan is to acquire and retain an 8th edition army, even as a new player during all this turmoil, to be able to play with existing players the 8th edition, and I'm pretty confident that I'll be able to do that. It's kind of weird, like in a lot of ways, coming into the game at this time, you almost feel like a bit like an idiot, because it's like you're coming in when everything's just you're coming in when everything is sort of, the feeling is just over, you know, and you're coming in learning the rules like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and like, oh, 8th edition, and so this does this and this does this, and you know, it's just like you're almost like that person that shows up like as everybody's leaving the party. And so, despite, you know, whatever, I just feel a little bit silly sometimes with this, even just, you know, going down and buying the stuff and whatever. It's kind of funny. But I'm good with that, because I do think that this is going to be around for a bit longer, and I have a hunch. If not actually on a grander scale, locally with folks I know. Last thing, and it's funny because on some of the comments, Garrison, and I'm not sure if he pronounces it Garrison or Gherkin or Gherkin, because I've heard people say it differently. I apologize, Garrison, if you're watching this, and that's the way I say it, is Garrison. But you've made some good suggestions on Kings of War in the past. if you watch my prior video, one of the things that I had said in sticking up for Games Workshop and liking Games Workshop products is I talked about how the rules and the world they provide is pretty robust. In a lot of ways, I've really had to put my foot in my mouth this week in my head, because in seeing the Age of Sigmar release, it's the exact opposite from GW as to what I described about what I like and what I think GW offers in their rule sets. And in all fairness, when I looked at the free copy of Kings of War, it intrigued me to know that there is a group that are actively promoting a mass battle rank and file system for fantasy and supporting it going forward, with a new release that's actually coming out on the rules in August. That really intrigued me. When I read the old rules, the current ones, which are going to be changed, in some ways it really justified to myself what I've said about alternative products at times, and that is it seems much simpler than 8th edition Warhammer, but in particular the magic seemed almost absent. Like there was this opportunity to do like a zap, and there I think there was between 1 and 3 spells, and that was a bit of a turnoff for me. Like I almost kind of looked at that, and in my head I was just like, yeah, like this is sort of oftentimes what the alternative is, is these rule sets that aren't as robust. They don't paint as rich of a world as, where you have lots of options in the rules and description and things. Well, I actually had the opportunity to look at a draft version of the next rule set for Kings of War, and it looks to have improved quite a bit. And although I still don't think that some of the areas like Magic are as robust as Warhammer Fantasy 8th edition, I think they're moving in the right direction, and I think that it's went from something where I would consider it extremely simple in that area to something that's playable and interesting because it's growing. And the other thing too is there's lots of new models coming out, and so they're really, I was actually impressed with the amount of models that were available already in Kings of War when looking at the factions. But if you look at the next set of rules, the draft, they're planning on doing lots of expanding. You can tell just from looking at it. Now, so I'm thinking that I will do this Orcs Army for Warhammer Fantasy and look to playing 8th, and I will try using it potentially for Kings of War if there's folks in my area that are going to play it. And then, excuse me one second. And then, in addition to that, if I end up playing Kings of War, I likely will pick up at least an army for that as well. And I've got my mind on that because I like the fact that it's not a dead game and they're supporting it, and it looks to be improving. Now, almost any game that I've played that was a big game, I didn't always like all of the models. Like, you have your favorites, you have the ones that you think are good, but they don't like stand out as favorites, and then you have ones you just plain don't like. That would be the case for GW games. That would be the case for any game I've played. And Kings of War is no different. There's actually models that I think are really great. Like, I really like them, and then there are ones that are good and acceptable and I would buy them. And then there are ones that I don't think I could get myself to buy because they just don't fit with, even if I want a particular theme and they're within that, I just don't fit with how I would do it. Like, and you know what, like Eldar and like lots of other ranges I've done are the same way. But I'll tell you, like, I never thought I'd do like an undead army, but I really like the look of their skeletons, just right off the top of my head. Their revenants and wights and skeletons, like, those are just really cool. I could see myself painting up some hordes of those. That would just be fun, and using those in a mass battle game. So yeah, like, where am I at now? I mean, I've been bit by the fantasy bug a bit. I want to play some games with my daughter, and that might end up being more time, although she's kind of likes the idea of mass battles. Age of Sigmar, as soon as I saw the miniatures, I knew I wasn't buying the set, but I still wanted to see how things would go for everything else. And I'm not really counting on that at all at this point. And so my focus is going to be playing some 8th edition, and I'm likely not going to buy into Kings of War if I do until the new rules come out. And they offer packages, which they have some great price packages, which is another thing I really like. But and you know, if they have some packages that that can contain the new set of rules, like and maybe somebody can comment on this, because this is an area that I don't understand, but they have like rules that they refer to as 3rd edition right now, and they say the free 3rd edition rules, but then like the ones that are coming out in August are labeled as 2nd edition. And unless that's a typo, I definitely saw spots where it said like download the 3rd edition rules, and then but yet it looks like it's 2nd edition is what's coming out in August. So that kind of confused me. But that's kind of what I'd be looking at doing. And you know, I'm not trying to be really negative on Age of Sigmar. Like, I realize a lot of folks that I kind of like their videos, and they're out front and center in the fantasy side of the community, are just really trying to hold back the horde of negativity that's out there. And I actually kind of appealed for that too, you know. But what is the I guess the expression that I thought of this week in regards to this is that, you know, like, I think it's important to be somewhat positive, because this is something we do for enjoyment. But at the end of the day, like, I'm not an eternal optimist. I mean, if something just doesn't appeal to me, I'll be honest about it. And that's kind of where I'm at. Like, I don't want to have to work at, particularly since I'm not vested, like in the fantasy, like I'm entering as a new player. I'm not vested to GW fantasy. Like, I don't need to be an eternal optimist. I don't need to essentially make this work and work at making it, at liking it, you know. and so yeah, like, unless something really drastically changes on that side, I don't see myself doing, you know, buying into the whole Age of Sigmar. So that's where I'm going. I think I'm looking at investing in 8th and owning that, and then looking to the future potentially with Kings of War. I think that's kind of where my head is at after 2 weeks of looking at all this stuff while painting up my musket and tomahawk stuff. Okay, hope you guys are taking it easy and not getting too upset about all of this stuff that are into the fantasy, and happy wargaming. Take care.